Hey everybody, this is Ryan E. Louie, and this is the Digg series. Hey, I'd like to thank everybody who listened to my first podcast. That was Art versus Fear. I hope you enjoyed it. I always look forward to your comments. Always like to give a shout out at the beginning of the podcast. Today it is going out to the 8th grade classes at Claggett and AI Root Middle Schools in Medina, Ohio. You folks are a big inspiration again, so a shout out to you folks. Oh, I should always do another one. Hey, my oldest son, Hudson Louie, did the logo that you see on this. It is really awesome. Kudos to him. He is a great talent. Today's episode, which is episode 2, is on the saying to me that was said by my percussion professor at the University of Utah, Douglas Wolf. It is, leave your egos at the door. Those who remain will be champions. Let's get into it. Whenever I use that saying, or it was used to me, I started to look up, where the saying came from. I mean, it is used by coaches across the world. It is used from into business leadership. And the way that I see it, and the way that it was used to me at the very beginning of this, was at the University of Utah with our percussion ensemble. It was, or even with marching band, with the drum line that we had there, it was, leave your egos at the door, those who remains will be champion. There is no room in leadership or in any kind of team or group setting for egos. So when we talk about egos, I'm going to tell a story real quick about, I was saying this to a bunch of students, and I had mentioned that saying, that phrase, and then I said to them, when it comes to music, I have no ego. And the group laughed, and I was really trying to explain that in any kind of group setting or team, or any kind of a position where you're trying to be part of a group, I think the last thing we need are egos. For example, when I was playing with the South Dakota Symphony, when I was principal timpanist there, if the conductor, for example, the maestro would go, "Hey Ryan, the timpani at letter A is too loud," I would be okay. And then I would back down on my volume. He knows the balance. I know where my balance is too when I'm playing in a group like that. But his opinion was that it was too loud. So do I argue with him? Do I go, you know what? My sense of timpani musicianship is far greater than anybody else's? Well, no. So I just quieted down. And my percussion quartet, Panta Percussion, it's the same thing there. Whoever takes the lead in our quartet, so let's say it is Alessio Royale. He is the percussion coordinator at Duquesne University. We were doing a piece that he arranged by Prokofiev and Morning Serenade. I had the melody at the time, and he said, "Hey, Ryan, you're a little too extravagant with your phrasing of the melody." I would say, "Okay." And I backed off with that. And then the next time he came back and said, "Oh, you can be a little bit more." And so anyway, whenever it comes to a musical setting, I really try and check my ego at the door. I think that there is a difference between what would be considered confidence, self-confidence, and ego. Another example, I was hitting a jam session. I think I was in Philly. My buddy and I had driven down there to go to a jam session. I think whenever I go with the attitude, you know what, I am going to kick butt. I'm going to destroy everybody, and I'm going to be the best player on the stage. Whenever you go with that kind of attitude or that kind of ego into any kind of situation like that, usually never serves a greater purpose when I play. And it usually backfires. And so I did go, And, I could not get into the right frame of mind to play. And because I think that your intention and I think that your attitude is wrong. And that's another example of check your egos at the door. Those who remain will be champions. So when it comes to musical instances, musical playing, I really try and look for the purity of where that music comes from, how my approach is when I play it. And we had talked about art versus fear in episode 1, and how that takes effect, with my deep breathing exercises, how I empty out my mind, and so that I can perform the best that I can perform. So when it comes to confidence versus ego, we're going to talk about that here a little bit. When it comes to confidence comes from, at least in my experiences of being a musician, is that it first has to come through study and research and practice. Those three things are the main ingredients, I think, that gives me the most confidence whenever it is that I perform. So what does each of those terms mean, and what do they mean to me, and what is my approach to it in life and in music? So let's kind of tackle study and research. So study and research means that if I have a piece of music that I'm beginning to learn, I will do the research on the composer. The composer's intent is another very, very important integral part about the learning process in a piece. What kind of composer was this? Was he or she or they? Were they? What kind of person were they? What does the piece involve? What does the piece mean? Where does that energy come from? So that's first the composer, because we're talking about composer's intent, and then it is what is on the music. I have a couple approaches when I'm learning a piece, or I'm doing my study for this. So the first thing is that sometimes I like to do my research and listen to different recordings of different players playing it. Sometimes when I'm learning a Beethoven symphony, I will have my score out, and not just my part. Actually, I have the full score, and as I go through the score with a recording, my favorite recordings of Beethoven symphonies are always the Cleveland Symphony, conducted by George Szell, and on timpani, that would be Cloyd Duff, a big mentor of mine. And for those who know me, know that he was an integral part of me becoming a timpanist. Anyway, I have my scores out, and I will go over it. I will mark who has the melody. I will mark the important parts. I'll mark who I'm playing with. Let's say during the section and music of that time, I'm usually playing a lot with the trumpets. And so I will make sure that whatever musical instruments that are playing while I'm playing, I make sure I note that so that I can better play with that group. And so the second thing is, and so that would be like score study. And then we did the research on Beethoven or Mahler or whoever the composer is. If I'm doing a solo, it's the same kind of research that I'll go through this. Another way is that it's how to reach your musical growth or musicality in phrasing. I do that two ways. I mean, study and research really gets me there as far as like, I know how other players have played it. I know how what their approach is. I mean to what kind of mallets they were using, what kind of instruments they were playing on, everything like that. From the hall, if it's a symphony orchestra. Anyway, what kind of cymbals they're using, if it's on drum set. Really, I try and be as meticulous as I can about that. And maybe it is a bit overzealous and a bit geeky, but me knowing how they create their sounds and what kind of instruments they use is important to me. So if I really want to emulate their playing, I can do that. The opposite side of that is that I would also like to rely and go off of what I think the musical phrase, or if I'm playing a passage of music, how I would like to play it, how I hear it, not only in my head, but wherever I'm playing it, that I hear it in the auditorium or the concert hall that I'm playing in, and I use my own kind of gut intuition on what that's going to be. So sometimes the opposite effect is that I don't want to be influenced by somebody else's playing, and I want to use my own phrasing and my own, I guess we'll call it musical intuition. And both ways I think are really, really valuable. But ultimately, that study and research is what gets my musicality stronger. And that's really what gets me there. Now, how do you use your own musical intuition and to be able to phrase the way that you want to phrase music? I think when it comes to phrasing music, every line has a shape or form to it. And there are just so many different ways that you can express yourself and your musicality. So let's talk about musicality here, mostly as a percussionist, and how you can use your musicality. The first thing I think is I used to think like musical intuition would get me to whatever musical situation, it would get me there so that I would able to express what I wanted to express. I think at that time, when I was a younger musician, I was really quite mistaken, because now we're talking about musicianship and how to get all of that, and I think you just have to have superior technique. So along with musicality, you have to have more or an overabundance of technique in order to get that done. Those who are in Studio Louis or in any of the classes that I teach here in Ohio, and whenever I do clinics elsewhere, know that I really talk about technique. So it doesn't matter what instrument that I am doing a clinic on. If it is on drum set, I do talk about technique and how that works between your hands and your feet and your coordination. If it is on snare drum, what kind of technique do we use for that? Do we play with accents or taps, or an accent and tap ratio? How we grip or stick, what the tension level is. On timpani, for instance, how to make sure that you're getting the most sonorous tonal sound out of your drums. And that all has to do with the grip and the technique that you use when playing the instrument. Again, all across the percussion board, to me, it doesn't matter what instrument you're playing, you would need to have superior technique so that you're able better to express yourself. And so those who are in the studio know that for a fact, that we work a lot on technique. And through more technique and an overabundance of technique, are you able to express yourself musically more? The other part is that how do you tap into your emotions to help get your musicality better? So, I could be playing a passage of music. What does that passage of music sound like to me? Is it a happy passage of music? Is it a sad passage of music? Is it angry? Is it melancholy? I've also thought of music in colors. Is it green? Is it orange? Is it red? Is it yellow, blue? Right. I also, when I think about musicality and phrasing, I often will think about it like in a film score-ish kind of form. What kind of movie would be playing if I were playing this kind of music? And that also helps me, because these are like my experiences, and that's what makes music and my musicality personal to me. These are some examples. So we talked about musicality. We talked about how to tap into your own musicality. We talked about how to reach these musical situations and through study and research, and then how to apply it into your everyday playing and practice. One of the greatest musical experiences that I've had, and to be honest, it was not so much that I was playing an instrument. This one is, I was playing drums on a cruise ship. We were actually up on the top deck where you could see the stars. Actually, we were passing Mount Vesuvius. It was glowing at the time, and we were just all hanging out. And it was some of the evening entertainers, along with the cruise directors and the house musicians and we were all hanging out. It was such a great hang. And one person was playing piano and the rest of us were singing and hanging out. This is a true musical experience, though. And they were doing Carole King, James Taylor. For those who know, those singer-songwriters are some of the greatest ones to ever walk the earth. And, we were singing. I have a horrible voice, but it really didn't matter. And that musical experience will never, ever, ever, ever leave me. The one last musical experience that I'll talk about that has to do with the saying, leave your egos at the door, those who remain will be champions. It is, I was playing Mahler 5 with the South Dakota Symphony. And, we're at the tail end of the piece. And it was actually one of the excerpts that always shows up on a principal timpani audition. It's just at the very last. And I just remember I was going through it. I was playing it. The conductor and I were deadlocked. And when I mean deadlocked, I mean like we were eye to eye. I could feel his energy. He was about ready to lose it. He was going to almost cry. It was just, and I was there with him. And, being that principal timpanist, I was leading the group. He was leading, I was leading. And the energy with the group was so intense and so passionate and beautiful. Only through that kind of state of humility to music and to your instrument and to the group can you reach that place where it is euphoric. It is so incredible. It was everything I could do to keep my composure so that I could finish the piece. But when I finished, it was such a beautiful, beautiful experience, and true humility towards the music. So, to wrap this second episode up, I am honored and I am enjoyed by my students that come back to me in lessons or in class that said they had listened to these podcasts. I hope that you get something from it. It is because of you folks, my students and my parents and my friends, that I do this, and I hopefully will continue to do this. I will continue to do this, and to know that I get a platform to share my experiences throughout life. And I hope they are meaningful to you. I do plan to have some guests on these podcasts. And so as we're moving forward through this, I hope that you will keep listening and they are interesting to you. They will always be found at these two places for right now. That is my YouTube page, which is, or my YouTube channel, which is Ryan Louie. RYUNLOUIE, and the next one is always on my website, ryanlou.com, RYUNLOU.com. Thanks everybody for listening, and I will talk to you folks next time. Thanks. Peace.